Nobody was supposed to say it this openly. For years, owners avoided putting real numbers into the public conversation, leaning instead on safe, comfortable language about growth, culture, momentum, and progress. Words designed not to upset anyone. But something shifted, and once it did, pretending was no longer an option. The change didn't begin with a press conference or a TV segment. It started in a private room where executives were staring at raw data instead of highlights. Viewership curves, revenue charts, partner projections. That's where the silence crept in, because one owner noticed something that didn't add up. The league felt louder than ever, yet the money wasn't moving at the same pace. Social media buzz was exploding, but actual viewership wasn't matching the noise. When he isolated one variable, Caitlin Clark, the charts spiked, not gradually but violently. At first it seemed like a glitch or a one-week anomaly that would flatten out, but it didn't. Every appearance, every highlight, every mention tied to her name created surges no traditional marketing campaign could explain. That's when the unspoken question finally surfaced. What happens if you remove everything except her? The answer was unsettling. When they did, the model collapsed, revealing an uncomfortable truth. She wasn't just part of the league's growth. She was the growth. Weeks later came the NBA on NBC moment, framed publicly as a harmless crossover and a symbolic bridge with no pressure attached. But once the cameras rolled, Caitlin Clark didn't behave like a guest. She didn't play it cute or overreact. She sat there calmly, broke the game down with precision, and looked like someone who had always belonged on that stage.
Clark, her NBC, the numbers for that game have finally been released. The executives over there already speaking very highly of her. Is there a potential position in the future? Are they going to be expanding her role? More appearances to come? Sunday night basketball, milestone for NBA on NBC Sports. Lakers-Knicks, 4.5 million viewers on NBC plus Telemundo, 5 million peak audience. Most watched regular season Sunday night NBA game since 2002, excludes Christmas Day. Sunday night NBA games. Now, a Sunday night NBA, is that ABC included or the ABC games Saturday night games from back in the day?
Millions watched. And not just WNBA fans or basketball diehards, but regular people. Inside NBC Sports, producers noticed something they hadn't seen in years. Viewer retention didn't dip, it climbed. Audiences stayed through the segment, rewound clips, and shared them far beyond traditional sports circles. That night did more than create buzz. It created leverage. By the next morning, updated projections were on the table, and that's when one owner stopped worrying about protecting feelings. According to multiple insiders, he put it bluntly, "This isn't incremental, it's exponential." Then he dropped the number that changed the tone of the conversation. 50 times the projected viewership impact, 50 times the revenue acceleration, and 50 times the partner interest compared to baseline expectations.
That comes with an NBA national broadcast. So he loved every bit of what Caitlin Clark did and what she brought to the broadcast. Now, this is where he started talking a little bit about having Caitlin Clark back more than that March 29th announcement. So it says NBC Sports is planning to bring Clark back later this season. Cordella confirmed that she is scheduled to appear as an analyst for the Knicks versus Thunder on March 29th. As we know, he also added that he hopes to see more of Clark moving forward, signaling that the door is open for additional appearances. While no expanded role has been formally announced, the comment suggested genuine interest rather than casual praise. So, hey man, I don't know. We might see Caitlin working that booth. That'd be dope though, man. That'd be dope. Of course, with everything going on with the WNBA, we don't even know if we're going to have a season, man.
50 times. That number was never supposed to leave the room, but once it did, everything began to unravel. Because if a single player can multiply a league's impact by 50, it leads to an uncomfortable conclusion. The league wasn't the engine. She was. The word spread quickly. Media insiders confirmed it quietly. Advertisers picked up on it immediately, and the tone of conversations shifted almost overnight. Suddenly, discussions were about positioning around her, not balancing exposure across the league. What followed wasn't loud jealousy, but professional jealousy, and other leagues took notice too. They saw the NBC numbers, watched the audience migrate, and understood what was happening, because attention is currency. That's when tension really set in. For years, the unspoken rule had been that no single player could become bigger than the system. The system always stayed in control. Caitlin Clark broke that rule without ever trying. She didn't demand special treatment, didn't threaten, didn't complain. She simply showed up and performed, and that performance forced an owner's hand. When he went public, it wasn't with emotion, but with math. He showed how viewership behaved before her appearances. Flat, predictable, controlled, then contrasted it with what happened after. Spikes so sharp they looked unreal. Revenue lines bending upward as if someone had physically pulled them. That's when he delivered the sentence that changed the season.
NBA presented to the players. This is the most recent proposal, and I guess they also brought this to the meeting on Monday. It's so funny, on all of these documents in the corner it says confidential, but they are currently circulating all around Twitter. So I want to go over some of these bullet points with you guys. The first slide, it said WNBA CBA proposal, goals for a win-win CBA. Number one, substantially increase player salaries to reflect recent future business growth. That number one bullet point is something that Adam Silver has said many of times when he is asked about the WNBA CBA. This is, again, it seems to be why the two sides are on different sides. It seems like the WNBA wants to raise the salary enough to where they don't have to give a percentage of this gross revenue that the players want. And that's where the players are feeling like there's such a disconnect, because it seems like they would prefer the revenue split over the salaries just increasing. But again, you can see here, substantially increased player salaries, which they have, by the way. They've increased the salaries like 6 times the amount of what they used to be. Number two, promote business health and profitability. And that has been such a big thing in all of these. And a lot of fans have chimed in like, the WNBA has never been profitable. And the WNBA is still young, you guys. It is going into its 30th season. And when we did the comparison of WNBA salaries in their 30th season, if they take this deal, and NBA salaries in their 30th season, and obviously we did the math for inflation, all those things, the WNBA players will actually be making more than NBA players were in their 30th season. So that's why I just don't think this deal is such a bad deal like all of the players seem to think it is, but the WNBA is still focused on good business health and profitability. Number three, maintain incentives for team and league investments. Now this next...
We underestimated her impact. Underestimated is the polite version of what that really meant, because the truth was harsher. They didn't know who was carrying them. The moment that statement hit the internet, the reaction was immediate. Fans argued, comment sections exploded, and other leagues went quiet, which usually signals one thing: they're watching. And what they saw unsettled them. Caitlin Clark didn't just bring new viewers to the WNBA, she pulled them into basketball broadcasts as a whole. NBC saw first-time viewers, sponsors saw entirely new demographics, and the pie didn't just grow, it shifted. That shift created resistance. You could feel it in the coverage, in the tone, in the sudden push to reframe the story around collective growth rather than individual impact. But the damage was already done. Once the numbers are public, you can't put them back in the box. That's when professional jealousy turned into panic, because if one player can generate that much value, she doesn't need the league nearly as much as the league needs her. And that realization flips the power dynamic instantly. The owner didn't retreat from it, he doubled down.
So, obviously Caitlin Clark's voice, the biggest voice that can speak on this, because she's been the catalyst for the WNBA being in position for a transformative CBA, a change in salaries, the way that they're headed. So it's good to hear that she's confident. She's always expressed so much love around the league and what it can become and what it was and all of those things. But nonetheless, it's still got to be a deal that's done. So you can get to the WNBA draft later, after the free agency and after the expansion drafts. But hopefully, that's a good sign for WNBA fans that the league's biggest star is saying she's confident a CBA will get done. Then there were some other topics hit up on the broadcast as well, including her wanting to play at Madison Square Garden. That is where she was broadcasting from. The Knicks And the Lakers, it is a great arena. I've spent a lot of time in the Garden.
Lakers and the Knicks taking center stage here for the 302nd overall meeting. And for the first time ever, we've got basketball night in America, the first Sunday in February. And we're joined by our special correspondent. Welcome to the team, Caitlin Clark. Yes.
Welcome. MSG for a Knicks game, so it's pretty cool.
I know, it's our first Knicks game, first time feeling the atmosphere. We got to get you to play on this court one day.
We have to talk to Matt Adam about that.
Can we make it mellow? Honestly, if there's someone
Even if it's a preseason game, we got to get it done. I don't think the Liberty will want to move a game over here, but we'll play anybody. It'll be fun.
Yeah. How could you describe maybe the atmosphere your first time in it?
Well, I think as a player, like, this is kind of when you feel the atmosphere the most, is when you're out on the court warming up. So, I mean, there's just a different type of buzz. And obviously when LeBron comes to town, it's probably really different, but...
He went on to explain how everything changed after NBC, how sponsorship calls suddenly came with demands for guarantees tied specifically to her appearances, and how negotiations that once dragged on for months became urgent almost overnight. That's when it became clear she wasn't just changing viewership, she was changing timelines. Deals moved faster, decisions accelerated, and long-standing excuses quietly disappeared. Throughout all of it, Caitlin Clark stayed silent. No victory lap, no comments about money, no response to the jealousy swirling around her. She just kept playing, and that silence was brutal. Because when someone reshapes an entire system without saying a word, the system itself starts to look weak. The owner later tried to soften the message by talking about teamwork, league-wide growth, and the importance of everyone involved. But it was too late. 50X had already taken hold. Fans repeated it, media amplified it, and other leagues paid close attention. Behind the scenes, strategies shifted overnight. Marketing changed, scheduling changed. Media priorities changed, and all of it pointed back to the same uncomfortable truth. Caitlin Clark wasn't riding a wave. She was the wave.
Iconic figure in basketball in the women's game right now, or the game in general. So we said, let's have a bigger conversation. And it's just so crazy that it feels like every other sport will just come out and say what it is besides the WNBA. The NBA is not scared to acknowledge that there's no more iconic figure in basketball. Not just the women's game, but possibly the game in general than Caitlin Clark. But we would not hear that in the WNBA space. We wouldn't hear that from WNBA media, but the NBA media and the NBA and the league itself is not scared to say it. Like we've seen it when Caitlin does golf events. It just seems like every league but her own is not scared to say the truth. But I do.
The jealousy wasn't personal, it was structural. Other leagues could see attention drifting, advertisers asking different questions, and fans making new choices about where to spend their time. Something you can't manufacture or force. By the end of the month, the league had fundamentally changed. Not because of a rule adjustment or a rebrand, but because one player forced an uncomfortable level of honesty. The owner didn't set out to create controversy. He was trying to explain success, but in doing so, he exposed dependence, and dependence changes everything. Caitlin Clark didn't just grow the league, she revealed what it was actually worth, and once that truth is visible, there's no going back to pretending. This wasn't hype or marketing, it was math, it was reality. That's why it shook everyone so deeply. No one expected the truth to be this clear, this large, or this closely tied to a single name. That's why the jealousy felt real, why the silence was so loud, and why this moment will be remembered not as a debut, but as a turning point. The day the owner stopped hiding the numbers, the day the league learned who truly drives it, and the day Caitlin Clark changed the business of basketball without asking permission forever.